In 2015, under the leadership of Xi Jinping, China began implementing a comprehensive reform of the People's Liberation Army, widely regarded as the largest military overhaul in the PLA's modern history. Behind this reform is not only an effort to modernize the armed forces, but also a far-reaching restructuring of the PLA's organizational system, command structure, and internal power architecture. So, what does this sweeping military reform actually consist of? Background to the reform. At the 18th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, China set a strategic goal of becoming a leading global economic and military power by the middle of the 21st century. To achieve this objective, China must not only sustain economic growth, but also build a modern military force capable of operating effectively in high-technology warfare environments. However, despite increased investment and accelerated modernization, the actual combat capability of the People's Liberation Army still faces significant limitations. In practice, improvements have mainly been seen in weapons and equipment as well as military technology, while capabilities in joint operations, real-world combat experience, and modern operational skills still lag behind those of the United States and other Western militaries. It is this reality that has necessitated a deep and comprehensive military reform aimed at restructuring the force organization, improving the command system, and enhancing combat capabilities in modern warfare. Objectives of the reform. The strategic objective of the reform program is to build the People's Liberation Army into a world-class military by the middle of the 21st century, commensurate with China's international standing, capable of safeguarding national security and interests, and serving the broader goal of the Chinese dream. The reform program sets out four major milestones. By 2020, basically complete mechanization and reach a relatively high level of informatization. By 2027, continue strengthening force development and further improve the level of standardization and professionalization. By 2035, basically complete the overall modernization of the military. By 2049, build the PLA into a world-class military with combat capabilities on par with or exceeding those of the United States Armed Forces. To realize these objectives, China has launched a comprehensive package of reforms across the People's Liberation Army. First, consolidating the absolute authority of the chairman of the Central Military Commission. One of the core objectives of China's military reform is to ensure that the People's Liberation Army remains firmly under the direct command of the chairman of the Central Military Commission. Before the reform, the so-called four general department system concentrated excessive power and, in practice, created a relatively independent layer of command and leadership. This structure assumed many functions that should have belonged to the Central Military Commission, thereby weakening its centralized and unified leadership role. To re-centralize authority within the Central Military Commission, in 2016 the four general departments system was dismantled and replaced with a new structure consisting of 15 smaller functional organs operating directly under the leadership of the Central Military Commission. Under the new mechanism, the Central Military Commission deliberates on and decides all major matters related to national defense and military affairs, without the need to seek approval from or consult the Politburo of the Chinese Communist Party, the National People's Congress, or the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Institutionally, the Central Military Commission is the supreme command authority over China's armed forces. In practice, however, the ultimate command authority is concentrated in the hands of the chairman of the Central Military Commission, currently Xi Jinping. Second, restructuring force organization and operational concepts. Before the reform, the People's Liberation Army employed an operational command system that was heavily influenced by the Soviet model. To meet the requirements of modern warfare and joint operations, the PLA was reorganized along lines closer to the current model of the United States Armed Forces. One of the first major measures was a reduction of 300,000 personnel, about half of whom came from the Army. The share of the Army was reduced, while the Navy, Air Force, and the Rocket Force were expanded. At the same time, the Armed Police and the Coast Guard were placed under the unified command of the Central Military Commission. The PLA then shifted to a model that separates the operational command system from the force management and force building system. Under the new structure, The Central Military Commission, headed by its chairman, currently Xi Jinping, exercises supreme and absolute command over the entire military through the Joint Staff System. 5 theater commands were reorganized from the previous 7 military regions, namely the Northern, Southern, Eastern, Western, and Central theater commands. These theater commands are directly responsible for the organization and command of combat operations. The 4 services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force (UA) are primarily responsible for force development, training, and equipment modernization. A dedicated Strategic Support Command is responsible for maintaining advantages in cyberspace, the electromagnetic domain, and outer space, ensuring information support for command and operations, and conducting strategic support missions. After the restructuring, the PLA's active duty strength stands at around 2 million personnel. The Army accounts for just over 1 million, the Rocket Force about 150,000, the Navy around 300,000, including more than 100,000 Marines and an expanded carrier force, and the Air Force about 398,000 personnel. The People's Liberation Army Strategic Support Force was established in December 2015, bringing together units responsible for space operations, cyber operations, electronic warfare, and psychological operations. The key change in the new system is that operational orders are transmitted directly from the Central Military Commission to the theater commands. This is intended to eliminate the fragmentation of command authority and each unit acting on its own problem that existed prior to the reform. Third, restructuring the military education and training system. Before the reform, the People's Liberation Army operated 67 military academies and colleges. After the restructuring, this system was consolidated into 43 training institutions under a unified management framework, significantly reducing the number of separate entities compared with the previous structure. The reduction in the number of academies was not intended merely to cut costs. More importantly, it aimed to raise the professionalism of military education by concentrating on the development of command competence, joint operational capabilities, and the ability to master emerging technologies, rather than maintaining a fragmented and loosely coordinated training system as in the past. Training content has also been adjusted to place greater emphasis on battlefield realistic training and advanced technologies, particularly in new domains such as cyber operations, artificial intelligence, and informationized forms of warfare. At the same time, the reform plan has expanded and strengthened key support and enabling forces, including the People's Liberation Army Strategic Support Force and the PLA Joint Logistics Support Force, in order to enhance overall support capabilities and the comprehensive combat power of the entire force. Fourth, prohibiting the military from engaging in business and profit-making activities. In February 2016, Xi Jinping issued a directive requiring the complete termination of all business and fee-based service activities conducted by the military, including gold mining operations run by the People's Armed Police. Subsequently, in June 2018, the General Office of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee, the General Office of the Central Military Commission, and the General Office of the State Council of China jointly issued a document entitled Guiding Opinions on Further Promoting the Complete Cessation of the Military's Paid Service and Commercial Activities. According to the document, all revenue-generating service activities of the People's Liberation Army were to be terminated. These include military hospitals providing paid services to civilians, the leasing of warehouses and facilities, military cultural and performance troops staging paid shows, military-affiliated enterprises undertaking external construction or commercial contracts, and military educational institutions enrolling and training civilian students. The purpose of these measures was to completely sever the military's links with commercial activities, tighten discipline, prevent vested interest groups and rent-seeking practices, and refocus the armed forces exclusively on their core mission of combat readiness. Fifth, cracking down decisively on corruption within the military. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, anti-corruption has been treated as a central pillar to ensure that China's military reform is not obstructed. The investigation and prosecution of 2 former vice chairmen of the Central Military Commission, Xu Kai-ho and Guo Boxiong, in 2014 marked the opening of the military's Tigers Hunting anti-corruption campaign. According to independent analysts, since 2012, more than 78 generals have been investigated, removed from their posts, or purged. Many senior figures who once occupied key positions within the command and staff system have also been successively brought down. Notably, even in the new term of the Central Military Commission formed after the 20th Party Congress, several prominent figures were reported to have been investigated or removed, including Li Shangfu, Zhang Yuxia, and Liu Zhenli. According to an editorial published by the PLA Daily, these cases demonstrate the firm stance of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee and the Central Military Commission toward combating corruption in the armed forces, a policy of no forbidden zones, no exceptions, and zero tolerance. Under Xi Jinping, China's military reform has not merely been about modernizing weapons or reorganizing institutions. In essence, it represents a comprehensive restructuring of power, discipline, and combat effectiveness within the People's Liberation Army. What ultimately matters is not the slogan of building a world-class military, but the central question of whether this new system is truly capable of functioning effectively in a real, high-technology conflict.